Good morning. I'm Sherman Stanford, and this is Making Sense of the Chaos. We're a little late. Bill and I were discussing something and got carried away. I'm sorry. Please forgive us. Mille pardons. 1,000 pardons. We're discussing postmillennialism. This is our last eschatological view that we're going to be taking a look at. Yesterday, Cindy asked in response to some of the things I said, why has the doctrine of the rapture been taught by the church for this time? And it's probably profitable to go over that again. First thing, before I even get there, let me tell you that I try very hard not to judge the motives of individual people because God tells us not to do that. But if you're going to examine historical movements, people doing X or Y or Z in a large group at a certain time, there are reasons why they do that. And the reasons are the motives for why they do that. Now, they may tell you what their motives are, in which case you don't have to try to figure out the motives. But most of the time when people tell you what their motives are, they're being less than honest. Not necessarily because they're trying to hide their motives, but a lot of times they don't even know what their own motives are. Do you know your heart well enough? In Jeremiah 17:9, God tells us that the heart of man is desperately wicked. Who can know it? Well, that includes the man himself. So whether we're talking about they're acting out of wicked motives or good motives, the truth is our motives are always very mixed, and we often don't know what they are. And so if we're going to understand why groups of people do things they do and how the ideas that float through the air affect what they do, then we're going to have to judge motives. You can't avoid that. Now, if we look at historically what's been happening in the last 200, 250 years in the Western world, it's pretty easy to see that rationalism, Enlightenment thought, modernism, if you will, has pretty much had the church on the run. You can see that in the world today. Look around you. It does appear that the church is on the run. The church is being defeated at every turn. Now, if you're a Christian, what are you supposed to do about that? How are you supposed to think about that? And what is your particular duty regarding that? Now, it's easy to view Christians as an undifferentiated mass. I mean, we're just all Christians, but that's just not true. God calls us to do many different things. Paul talks about the hand and the foot and the finger and the eye. I mean, we're all Christians, but we don't all serve the same functions. Some Christians are supposed to be the intellectual leaders of Christianity. Some people are supposed to be the spiritual leaders of Christianity. And some are supposed to have ministries of mercy. Some have ministries of supplying needs to others. There are people who, as Christians, their job is to make millions and millions of dollars and help support the church in that way. So the point is that we don't all do the same things. But because the church has been on the run over the last 200 to 250 years, the people in the pews, the people whose jobs are not to marshal the intellectual arguments for Christianity and for doing this or not doing that, if they're abandoned by those leaders, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? If they want to be faithful, but it looks like all of their captains and majors and generals are running away, who's going to lead? So you got some sergeants coming up to lead. Now, what do the sergeants know about the strategy of war? Well, not a whole lot. And so a lot of times the decisions they make are not as good as they could have been. Essentially, what happened with Christianity, and you can see it in the world today, is that much of Christianity has been making compromises with the seed of the serpent. Now, since the seed of the serpent represents a lie, and the seed of the woman represents the truth, when there's a compromise by the seed of the woman with the seed of the serpent, what does that involve? Think about that. When truth compromises with a lie, what do you end up with? Well, less than truth, isn't that right? How do you compromise the truth and a lie and not end up compromising the truth? Duh. Don't you see that in the world today? Look around you. How many churches have compromised all over the place? Compromised on the issue of abortion, compromised on the issue of human sexuality. They compromise all over the place. Now, when they compromise, are they finding a middle ground that's also true? There is no middle ground that's also true. There's either God's truth or there's a lie. That's it. If you believe that there are many, many truths, then you don't believe in God. It's perfectly simple. The God you believe in is not the God of the Bible, because he is the single truth, the single God, and he is the single source of all truth. So at any rate, over the last 150 years, those people who wanted to remain faithful to the gospel, faithful to the message of the gospel, but fearing the rationalists, the modernists, and having no real answer to them, they retreated. They retreated in the face of the enemy. They retreated. It was cowardly. Now, would I have done any better? Almost certainly not. That isn't the question. The question is, what were the ideas and what were the responses to those ideas? Well, the ideas that were assailing them were the ideas of human autonomy, naturalism, that is to say that denial of the supernatural, that all truth is discoverable by man, that man's mind is the source of all knowledge, of all ultimate truth. Now, that idea is not compatible with Christianity. And so they're being defeated by that idea. They don't have a good answer for it. So what they do is they say, okay, well, we'll give you the world and we'll give you your rationalism and we'll retreat into citadels of faith. And what we'll do is we'll try to reach out to the world and save as many as we can in the meantime. But we're going to protect God's word by not engaging in this conflict with you guys anymore. So we're giving up the intellectual struggle. We're giving up the world to you, but we're going to claim the spiritual dimension, which was, in effect, leaving the world. Now, is it hard to understand how people who've chosen to leave the conflict, to leave the world intellectually, spiritually, morally, would find it pretty easy to be seduced by somebody coming along saying, look, here's a whole new way to look at the end times. God is going to rapture us out of this conflict. All you have to do is just hang on until Jesus returns, and he's going to rapture you out of this conflict, and then he'll come back on earth, and he'll beat all these bad guys. As Bill said the other day, this is a Billy Goat Gruff mentality. Was it a Billy Goat Gruff?
I got a 5-second delay. I haven't heard it yet.
Oh, okay. Well,
the Billy Goat Gruff.
Yeah, wait for my big brother.
Yeah.
Billy Goat Gruff.
You just have to worry about the troll.
That's right. Yeah, the troll comes out and he frightens the little Billy Goat, and the little Billy Goat says, "Well, hey, you don't want to eat me. Eat my big brother." It's the same story. Okay, Christians are saying, all right. Look, you've defeated us. We can't beat you. But if you really want a good meal, why don't you wait till my big brother Jesus comes along? Because he's coming. And then they leave the bridge and they think, he's going to kick your butt.
Clip clop.
Yeah, clip clop. Well, that's what's going on, all right? But that sounds pretty terrible, doesn't it? Well, yes. And the question that you have to answer is, do you want to escape the world today, or do you want to engage the enemy, knowing that the seed of the woman, you have been told that Jesus will be with you till the end, and that you will triumph over those bad guys, that your job is to fight and to fight to the end. Is that what you want to do? Or do you rather want to leave the world? Look, how tough is it to get up and fight every day? Well, I don't know how tough it is for you, but it's very tough for me. Every morning when I wake up, I want to just curl up and disappear, because I know it's going to be another struggle, another day, and I feel so weak and so powerless, and how am I going to defeat the enemy today? And the answer, of course, that I have to remind myself each day is that I'm not going to defeat the enemy. That's not my job. My job is to fight. That's all. Just to fight with the weapons he's given me, the truth, the sword of truth, to put on the helmet of salvation, and to go out in battle. And who's going to win the battle? Well, who will be with me till the end of the age? Jesus Christ. And so I get out of bed and I decide, well, I'll do my part today. I'll do my part today. Well, how important is that from the world's perspective? Not very. I'm just some little peon in the corner of the world. Nobody knows. All right, fine. It doesn't matter as far as the world's concerned, and as far as I'm concerned with how effective I'm being in the world. What matters is whether I'm being faithful. And that was the question these people had to answer as well. They didn't have good answers, and they ran away. Every morning I want to run away. And I don't run away, not because of my great courage, but because God is my strength and my refuge, not me. And so I just go out and do what I can. Now, I've been given a little bit of an advantage over others in that I'm able to see how these ideas work, and I can see that over time, the world has no chance. It may look like it's winning at every turn, but it's not winning. God is using them. He laughs in derision. That's what it says in Psalm 2, that God laughs in derision when he looks at what men do in rebellion against him. Well, you got to remember that, okay? He's not on the run. He's using these people for his own purposes. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the millennium. All right, now, the millennium should be 1,000 years, right? I mean, 1,000 is 1,000. How plain can that be, right? Every time in the Bible, when it says 1,000, it means 1,000. Isn't that right? Well, you're going to end up with some problems. Why? Well, for one thing, in Genesis chapter 20 at verse 6, it talks about 1,000 generations. Now, you tell me how you're going to square 1,000 generations and 1,000-year ruling and reigning with Christ. As Christians, we believe that the world is no more than 10,000 years old, probably no more than 7,000 years old. And so if we're going to have 1,000 generations and each generation is 40 years, that's 40,000 years. Well, how's there going to be 1,000-year ruling and reigning with Christ on earth, a literal 1,000, if there's going to be a literal 1,000 generations? I think that we have to understand that the word 1,000 means something other than literal 1000. As has been previously shown, the Bible is replete with examples of numbers being used non-literally. Jesus tells Peter that he is to forgive 70 times 7, which all commentators agree is intended to mean that Peter is to forgive every offense without limit. 7 is the number for perfection or completeness. 10 is the number for totality or fullness. They are multiplied, then the total is multiplied by an additional factor of 7, making the requirement for unlimited, total, fully perfect, and complete willingness to forgive unmistakable. Do you understand? Jesus was not giving him a finite number. He was not saying 490 times. You forgive him 490 times, and if he offends you the 491st time, you're off the hook. You don't have to forgive him anymore. That was not what he was saying. He was using the number in a figurative sense. This was Jewish hyperbole. It was not intended to set a specific number, but to say every time and forever. Well, why not just say every time and forever? Well, because that's not how human beings talk. It's not how God thinks. It's not, why do you say things non-literally? Why do you use figures and symbols? Why? Well, because you think they work better than literal words, don't you? Or you would just say things literally all the time. But you don't sound like a how-to manual when you're talking to people. Sometimes you sound poetic. Sometimes you sound all kinds of ways. Well, all right. That's whose image are you made in? Why do you do these things? I mean, duh. Is this complicated? I don't think so. We have already discussed the reference in Revelation to the number of redeemed being 144,000. So we know that number is not literal. Psalm 50 speaks of God owning the cattle on 1,000 hills. Yet no one believes that he does not own the cattle on the 1,001st hill and on all hills thereafter. Additionally, those passages earlier referred to, which quote the Bible as mentioning 1,000 generations on earth before the end, for example, Genesis, and there are others, Genesis 20, verse 6, create an irresolvable tension unless we either see each generation as approximately 1 year in length, which would be a little bit strange. I've lived through 73 generations. Ooh, that's pretty impressive, isn't it, Bill?
Still 5 seconds late.
All
Sorry.
right. I can't use Bill that way anymore. He's got his earplugs in and he's monitoring what I'm saying 5 seconds behind.
Wait, what? I can do this. I can have one in, one out. What?
No, it's okay. Clearly, except for a slavish commitment to an artificial, literal hermeneutic that does violence at almost every turn to the text when it is applied, there is no reason to insist that the millennium is a literal 1,000 years. It doesn't make it less true because it's figurative. You understand that? When you tell somebody that you're hungry enough to eat a horse, the fact that you're not ready to eat 1,000 pounds of horse meat is not really relevant, okay? What you're telling people is that you're very hungry, and they don't think that you're telling them that you want to eat 1,000 pounds of horse meat. They probably understand that you don't want to eat even 1 pound of horse meat. You don't want to eat horse meat at all. But you're just telling them in a very poetical, symbolic way, extravagant way, if you will, that you're very hungry. Once again, why do we do this? We do this because we're made in the image of God, and that's how God does things. And the truth is, it makes our lives better. It makes them more interesting. Huh? Couched as the millennial reference is in the midst of John's revelation, a book literally filled with hyperbole, symbol, and figure, the natural presumption is to expect a symbolic meaning, especially since the very number 1,000 is used elsewhere. Psalm 50, Exodus 20, verse 6, in a clearly symbolic sense. Unpacking the symbolism behind the number 1,000 is quite simple. 10 is the numerical symbol for quantitative totality. Cubing a number requires multiplying itself by itself twice. 10 cubed is 1,000. 10 times 10 times 10. Perfect fullness times perfect fullness times perfect fullness involves perfect fullness to the power of 3, the number for God. Any question remaining about how full this fullness will be is functional unbelief. Therefore, the truth is that the Apostle John intended to convey the perfect fullness of time for the duration of God's kingdom on earth. He did not intend to limit that perfect fullness to a literal 1,000 years any more than the psalmist intended to limit God's ownership of hills or cattle when he stated that God was the owner of the cattle on 1,000 hills. How many years that perfect fullness will entail, neither John nor God tells us. We must be content with that. It's a long time, right? Okay, what shall we conclude from all these things? Is postmillennialism the correct system? Should we reject the other systems? Well, obviously, I think the answer to the first is, of course, postmillennialism is the correct way to see eschatology, and the other systems are then incorrect and should not be followed. But let me give you my reasons in conclusion. Okay? Perhaps the strongest support for postmillennialism is the overall tenor of the Bible beginning at Genesis 3:15, which is commonly called by theologians the proto-evangelion. In response to the fall of man, Jehovah says to the serpent, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring, seed, and her offspring, seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. While this passage does not indicate who wins the war, the expected favorite would no doubt be the one with the bruised heel rather than with the one with the bruised head. That is especially so, taking into account that the Hebrew word for bruising suggests crushing. Now, if you got to pick a winner and you're told before the battle begins, one of them is going to crush the head of the other and the other one is going to crush the heel of the first one, who are you going to put your money on? This is MMA. Bill has an answer.
On the heel.
The heel?
Yeah, the guy who bruises the heel is not going to die, so he's going to be okay. The guy who actually gets the head crush, they're not going to live anymore.
Okay. I'm gonna put my money on the one who gets his heel crushed, not the one who gets his head crushed. Okay? Now, it's up to you if you want to put your money on the one who gets his head crushed. Additionally, the seed of the woman is identified in the New Testament as Jesus himself. It is preposterous to suggest that Satan acting through his seed will defeat Jesus acting through his seed. That pictures evil triumphing over good, Satan triumphing over God. All right. And sometimes people think that that's true, but really that's a Gnostic view of the world. That is not. That's Gnostic dualism. That's not Christianity. Okay? Satan and God are not equal, are nearly equal combatants fighting this titanic struggle worldwide, and sometimes evil wins and sometimes good wins, and we don't know for sure who's going to win. We believe God ultimately wins, but Satan's going. No. Now there is a titanic struggle going on within humanity between the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. Yes, and behind these are God and Satan. Now, why does God choose to have this struggle between the seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman? Because in that struggle, he gets to underline, to make his point about evil and good, about his strength, his sovereignty, and by evil's ultimate futility in the face of goodness. All right? And he makes his point slowly, deliberately over time, and he repeats himself often. Why does God have to repeat himself often? Well, let me guess. Why do you have to repeat yourself to your children so often? Why? I mean, you tell them, don't do this, and they do it. And you tell them, all right, I told you don't do this, and you discipline them. And then you say, don't do it again. And for a while they don't do it. Then they do it again. And you have to tell them again. And you have to tell them again. Well, who are the children of God? We are. And how often does he tell us not to do things and we do them anyway? And then he disciplines us. And he tells us, don't do this. And we don't do it for a while. Then we do it again. So why does he do it over and over and over again? Because he's dealing with dunces. Us. Not only dunces, but rebellious dunces. Even the best of us, we still rebel sometimes, don't we? Yes. Keeping this in mind, let us turn to the book of Job. The setting is a conversation between Satan and Jehovah, in which Jehovah praises Job. Now, Satan, of course, Satan is filled with envy. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like it. Remember? He's the angel of... Initially, he was the angel of light. He's very beautiful. That's why he's called Lucifer. It means light. And so he questions Job's motive for obedience, suggesting that it is easy for him to be good under Jehovah's protection. So Jehovah grants Satan permission to afflict him. He says to Job, behold, all that he has in your hand, all that he has is in your hand. Only against him do not stretch out your hand. You can take away everything that he has. Later, when Job remains faithful after Satan has taken away all that he has, including his children, Satan, implicitly going back to God, asks for more power to afflict Job. He says, oh, yeah. No, you took away everything he has, but look, I didn't afflict him personally. This is just, I took away stuff, outward stuff. I mean, if I afflict him, and personally, then you're going to see he's going to abandon you. He's not going to be faithful. So, God says, all right. You can afflict Job personally, but you can't kill him. So Satan goes back and he afflicts Job, but he very carefully does not exceed the authority God has given him. He does not kill Job, although he afflicts him terribly. The point is that the relationship between Jehovah and Satan is not depicted as that of equal adversaries. It is far from a picture of cosmic dualism of good and evil locked in titanic battle. That's the picture Gnosticism paints, not Christianity. Rather, the pattern is Satan asks, Jehovah grants, if it pleases him. That is a servant-master relationship. Satan is Jehovah's boy. Okay, they're not equal. Satan works for God. Well, why would God put up with that? For his own purposes, good purposes. But what are they? I can give you my theories, but the bottom line is, we don't have to know that. We know who God is. We know who Satan is. We know that God uses Satan, so we know that it's a good thing that God uses Satan. Well, I don't understand that. Who are you that you have to understand everything? I mean, you don't even understand how your heart works, and it continues to work every day. You don't understand that. You don't understand how this computer works, but you use it. You don't understand a lot of things, but you use them, you accept them. When I hear people say, I can't believe anything I don't understand, I think, wow, that came out of your mouth, really. I mean, you really said that. But I'm sure your ears did not hear what your mouth just said, or else your brain is on vapor lock. Am I being sarcastic and harsh? Yes, on both counts. Yes. It is delusional for Satan to think that he can triumph against God. It is equally delusional for anyone else to think so. Postmillennialism emphatically teaches the victory of the gospel in time and on earth over Satan and his seed by the body of Christ, his church, the seed of the woman. Following Jesus' resurrection, as he was prepared to ascend unto his Father, this is my next point. In Matthew 28, 18 through 20, he provides a clearly victorious context for his disciples and their future interactions with the seed of the serpent. He says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. In effect, he provided them with the context for the remainder of history on earth. Now, where in that do you hear a note of defeat? And where in there do you think that he was suggesting to them, look, you need to be expecting that you're going to be defeated, and then I'll come back and I'll rescue you and pull you out, and then I'm going to come down on earth and win the battle for you. Where do we get that? Is that part of this? No, it's no part of this. I see we've reached the end of our time, so we're going to finish this conclusion tomorrow, and we may have time tomorrow to get started on, well, essentially Arminianism, but really it's synergism, which is the idea that God and man work together. Each has a part to do in saving men, and that man triggers God's decision to save him. My contention is that's wrong. But anyway, we're going to get started on that tomorrow after we finish this conclusion. I don't think it's going to take the whole half hour or the whole hour.
Full hour.
At any rate, Bill, would you like to add anything?
We did a little thing differently. I did a watch party like I did yesterday, so whenever it's over, I'll let you know who watched it, because you can add that to the views. And it's not about numbers, it's just, we always like to figure out, you've taught me, you have to have measurable goals, so
Right.
you know how effective, or,
That's right.
who you're reaching.
Yes, are we doing a good job? And that's what we're trying to do, a good job in faithfulness to God. And what you think of us matters very, very little. What you think about God matters entirely.
If I can't say one thing, thank you for Cindy St. Blanc, Ann Pinnick McKinney, Terry Swallow, Julius Craig, Zach Arsenault, Mr. Marvin Schwarzenberg, Senior, Tim Marks, who else? Gilly Rodriguez, I hope I pronounced that right, and Jennifer Emmons for watching on the watch party.
Thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. And in the meantime, remember, there are worse things than dying, and the very worst of all is being unfaithful to God.